What's up guys? Welcome back to the channel Hand Waving. Your friend Naruto Addict 2.0 is here again with a brand new Naruto fanfic that's going to change everything. A story where Naruto is betrayed and banished. But destiny has bigger plans for him. From exile to emperor, this is the journey of power, strategy, and love. Today's fanfic is titled, What If Naruto Altered Fate Through Sakura's Bloodline? Part 2. What's with you and Boruto? Sakura smiled at Sarada as she sat down. Sarada looked over at the entrance to Ichiraku's and she caught the glimpse of him grinning at her before he dashed off. I have no idea what you are talking about. Sarada spoke nonchalantly as she looked down at the menu in front of her. Really? Sakura raised an eyebrow to her daughter. Drop it. You always read too much into things. Sarada looked up at her mom. Sakura's voice faded as she looked down at her own menu. Sarada and her mom sat in silence while they waited to order their ramen. Sarada started to snap out of the haze of feeling happy to realize she was sitting in front of one of the people that was hiding things from her. She wanted to press her mom for answers. She wanted to demand her mom's complete honesty. She also didn't want to talk about it. She knew her mom would not give her the answers she wanted. Her mom always had a way of avoiding and deflecting, especially when it came to her dad. So, Sarada finally spoke up as they were served their ramen. Who is Suigetsu? Sakura stared at her daughter for a long silent moment. A friend of your dad's. Sakura sighed. I don't really know him all that much myself. So, do you trust him? Sarada crossed her arms and rested them on the table. Sakura shrugged. What does that mean? You know Team 7 was given a mission, and you know it is dangerous. I am asking if you trust the information passed to you from this friend of my father's. Sarada watched her mom shift in her seat. Sarada, I knew you would be given the mission. I trusted the Hokage to handle the mission details as that is who you report to for missions. I know it will be dangerous. I am worried for all of you. Sakura started to eat her ramen. She took a moment to chew her noodles. But I know with the Hokage by your side. Stop. Sarada held out an open palm to her mom, and Sakura looked at her daughter surprised. What? Sakura said confused. What are you talking about, the Hokage? Going on the mission with you. Sarada's words cut off by her mom now. Sarada lowered her head to stare into her ramen bowl. She felt even more miserable about this mission now. Sarada felt silly thinking that the Hokage would sit this mission out, but there was a part of her that would expect Shikamaru to stop him. Sarada sighed. What is going on with you, Sarada? Sakura looked at her daughter, concerned for her. Sarada lifted her head to look into her mom's eyes. Her mom looked into Sarada's eyes. What are you talking about? Seriously. You leave it up to the Hokage to talk to me about my dad, to discuss a mission involving my dad. You knew this whole time that I would be asked as Team 7 to take part in this dangerous mission. First time meeting my father, and you want to ask me what is going on with me. Sarada pushed her ramen to the side. Her stomach was growling. She hadn't eaten all day, but she was too upset to even attempt to eat. Sarada, I should go. You know Sensei doesn't like waiting on us. Sarada said, standing up. She reached to her back pocket and took out her headband. She held her headband in a tight fist. There is a lot more to all of this. Sakura stood up. But no one cares to take the time to help me understand. Sarada pushed her chair in. Give us a chance to Sarada. Sakura walked to her daughter and hugged her. She knew the last thing her daughter wanted was a hug. Sarada let her mom hug her but did not return the hug. 16 years, Mom. Sarada rolled her eyes. You have had 16 years to help me understand. They were both silent for the duration of the hug. Sakura pulled out of the hug and returned by her seat. She sighed and closed her eyes, realizing her daughter had a fair enough point. Sarada walked past her mom. Don't worry about waiting up for me. You know how it is. She glanced over her shoulder at her mom. Sakura sighed heavily and nodded. Sarada walked out of Ichiraku's feeling even more miserable. She was going to have to deal with the Hokage more. She figured if she toughed out this mission she could at least get away from him and breath, rethink her thoughts about me, give her heart some time to figure out what she really feels now. Sarada walked to the usual meeting spot with her hand still holding her headband tightly. She was determined not to back out of this mission no matter how much it hurt though. This was her chance to finally meet her dad, to finally see his face outside of the pictures she sees. Sarada, you made it. Konohamaru motioned for her to join him, Mitsuki, and Boruto. Mitsuki stepped aside to give Sarada room beside Konohamaru. Sensei, did you think I wouldn't show up? Sarada pushed her headband back into her pocket. She stared at Konohamaru in disbelief. Not by choice. I wasn't sure what happened back at the Hokage's office, or what your mom would say after finding out about the Sharingan. Konohamaru placed a comforting hand on Sarada's shoulder. Well, my mom doesn't know about what happened, or she didn't mention it when she saw me. Sarada glanced over at Boruto. Boruto was fidgeting with his jacket zipper. Konohamaru moved his hand from her shoulder and sighed. Interesting, Mitsuki nodded. Sarada looked at Mitsuki but turned her attention back to Konohamaru. We don't have much time. We are leaving the leaf in about 2 hours. The Hokage has to sort some things out in the village before we leave. Konohamaru looked at Boruto. Whatever, who is going to be doing his job while we are gone? Boruto glanced toward his dad's office. Kakashi-sensei. Konohamaru spoke off-handedly. Better him than Shikamaru, Sarada spoke rudely. Lay off the rudeness, Sarada. I need us to focus. This is a serious mission. Konohamaru looked over at Sarada now. You think I don't know that? Sarada shook her head mumbling, unbelievable. Sarada turned away from her sensei and walked to the bench just a couple feet away. She sat down and held her stomach. She felt fatigue again. Her stomach was aching. Boruto watched Sarada. He never heard Sarada talk so disrespectfully about the adults in the village the way she had been today. He never heard Sarada speak so rudely to adult, especially Konohamaru sensei. Sarada noticed Boruto looking at her. She glanced up at him. They both turned their attention back to Konohamaru. Look, Sarada, I want us to work like a team. Whatever is going on, we must set it aside and be a team. This is no time for us to be harsh with each other. I know you know that this is important. Please, while we are on this mission, you need to focus on your Sharingan. Now that you have woken it, you need to hone it. Konohamaru looked up at the night sky and stood quietly for a moment. Sensei. Mitsuki watched him. Konohamaru shook his head and looked at his team. He re-explained the mission in detail just as Shikamaru explained it earlier. He took a little extra minute to explain the importance of Sarada's Sharingan, and how that has given them an advantage. Sarada was not paying attention. She stared off into the distance. Boruto realized Sarada had zoned out, and he walked to her and sat next to her. He didn't say anything to her or even draw any attention to her. Instead, he leaned back on the bench and listened to Konohamaru. He did not ask questions or make remarks about the mission, or his dad. Mitsuki was the one asking questions this time. All his questions were tactical, and strategy related. Go gather up your mission backpacks. Try and eat something. We are going to be on our feet till dawn. Konohamaru dismissed his team. He turned on his heel and headed off to also gather his things. He had expected to get trouble from Sakura or even more of a fight from Sarada. He was surprised that Sakura was not aware of what happened in the Hokage's office. Sarada. Boruto leaned over and waved a hand in front of her face. Sarada blinked a couple times and pulled her head back away from Boruto's hand. Hey Sarada. We need to gather up our things. Come on. I will get you something to eat. I can hear your stomach growling. Damn, I thought my dad had a loud stomach. Boruto. Don't worry about it. Sarada threw a serious look at Boruto. She did not need Boruto to baby her. Boruto grinned at her and stood up. He held a hand out to her to help her up. Sarada just made another face at him. Oh no, you don't. You are going to eat, and I am going to help you. You can't fight me on this. We are leaving on the mission soon and Konohamaru is insistent that we are prepared. Boruto kept his hands out waiting on her to give him her hand. He gave her another grin. Sarada sighed and rolled her eyes. Here he goes being all happy and cheerful again. He is so annoying. I wonder why he is making such an annoying effort. Sarada reluctantly reached her hand up to his, and Boruto grabbed her hand and pulled her to her feet. He smirked at her. Sarada felt a tingle in her legs as she stood up. She had to admit to herself that she really did want to eat. Let's go get some food first. Boruto jerked ahead toward the direction of the small restaurant down the street. Sarada knew the exact place Boruto was implying. It was one of the fewest places where he could get one of his favorite foods. Sarada smiled. Boruto nodded his head, grinning at her smile. He let go of her hand and started walking. He started digging through his jacket pockets. Boruto, there is no need for this. Sarada half laughed. You are just saying that because you don't want to accept that you are starting to like me as a friend more. Boruto looked over at her and winked. I get it, Sarada. We are better rivals on a team than we are friends on a team. Boruto waved a hand to her to tell her to stop fighting the issue. Wait, what? Sarada laughed. You think we were rivals, Boruto? She caught up with his quick pace and elbowed him in the ribs. Hey, he elbowed her back. That's what my mom says. She says it's a lot like our dad's. His voice trailed off, and he shrugged. What? Sarada made a confused face. You know, Uzumaki and Uchiha, Naruto and Sasuke always at each other, fighting, arguing, trying to be better than the other. Both on Team 7, Boruto smirked at Sarada. But doesn't your dad always say my dad is his best friend? Sarada said quietly. Boruto's smile became fox-like, much like Naruto's when he was up to something. Sarada looked over as they arrived at the place. Sit. I will get us something to eat. Boruto walked off to order food. Sarada watched him, feeling confused. She found a table by the door. Before sitting down, she removed the headband from her back pocket and set it down on the table. She stared down at the hidden leaf symbol. She closed her eyes, feeling fatigue again. The smell of the food in this place was making her more and more hungry. Her mouth started to water. When she opened her eyes, she found Boruto coming her way. Which would you rather have, a best friend on Team 7 or a rival? Boruto set a cup in front of her and sat down across from her. I don't know. Sarada glanced in the cup, and saw it was a carbonated drink. She watched the bubbles surface to the top of the beverage. Well, think about it, Sarada. Boruto said bluntly. He was still talking in a cheerful tone. What does this have to do with anything? Sarada looked up at Boruto. It has to do with everything. Boruto smirked. His whiskers accenting his face made Sarada think of the smile of Boruto's dad. She looked down at her headband. Boruto's attention fell to her headband too. He looked over it and reached a hand out to it. He picked it up. You should really wear it. He looked over the silver plate. Sarada watched Boruto's hand holding up the headband. 2 hamburgers, and 2 fries. A young man walked to their table holding their food on a tray. Boruto grinned and nodded. The man placed the tray on the table and walked away. Thank you. Boruto said over his shoulder at the guy. Boruto put the headband down. He looked at Sarada and then down at the food. We better eat. He smiled. Sure. Sarada nodded. As they both began to eat, Boruto glanced at her headband. It was starting to bother him seeing it laying there, and Sarada not wearing it. Boruto wanted to ask why she wasn't wearing it, but he didn't want to upset her. He decided instead to just keep quiet and let her eat. They both glanced at each other every now and then. Boruto felt good that both had created a stronger bond today. He hoped Sarada felt the same way. So how does the number 1 big mouth ninja always know about missions and stuff that is confidential? Sarada stared at Boruto taking the last bite of his hamburger. She had finished eating before him. Son of the Hokage. Boruto grinned. Doesn't mean anything. Sarada drank the last of her drink and set the cup down with a satisfied smile. You really think my dad always keeps reports and files locked away? Boruto rolled his eyes at how irresponsible his dad was sometimes. And what? You just sneak in a shadow clone undercover? Sarada smiled and nodded. You know it, Sarada. Boruto grinned. They both finished off their meal, and Boruto stood up. He looked around and noticed a lot of the people that were inside had already left. He assumed that meant closing time. Sarada stood up and they both walked outside. Sarada looked up at the sky filled with stars and wondered what she was going to do on this mission. She thought of Boruto being friendly with her. She thought about his question about friends and rivals. She was still feeling a little lost at what he was playing at. She thought about the Uzumakis and Uchihas. She never thought about the rivalry, because most of the time she was too angry that she didn't have her dad in her life. She looked over at Boruto. He was crouched down petting a stray black dog. "Hey Boruto," Sarada stepped to him and put a hand on his head. "Thank you. You got it, friend." Boruto grinned, turning his head up to look at her. Sarada's hand slipped off his head. She smiled down at him. While it was night time, the stars still managed to reflect off Boruto's brilliant blue eyes. "So, I should get home to gather everything." Sarada adjusted her glasses. She tucked her headband away in her back pocket again. "Yeah." Boruto stood up and scratched the back of his head. "I am already packed. I can go get my things and meet up with you." Boruto held a fist up to Sarada. Sarada looked at his fist and then looked at Boruto's face. She brought a fist up hesitantly. She bumped her knuckles to his knuckles. As Sarada and Boruto went their separate ways, Sarada got lost in thought about the Hokage again. She thought about waking up and finding an orange flower. She thought about the shadow clone complimenting her. She smiled, remembering how good the Hokage's hands felt on her body. His raspy voice as he said her name. Sarada shivered and snapped out of her thoughts. She walked up the steps to her home. She opened the door to find her mom busy in the kitchen. She walked by without a word and went straight to her room. She shut the door and leaned back against it. She closed her eyes and brought her body slowly to the ground. She felt tears fill her eyes. She was so conflicted about everything in her life. Sarada looked up to see her bed was exactly how she left it in the morning. She got up and sat on her bed. She pulled the pillow to her lap and hugged the pillow tightly. She lowered her head to the pillow and inhaled deeply the scent of the Hokage that was still faintly lingering on her bed. Tears started falling onto the pillow and she whimpered. Sarada slowly pulled the pillow away from herself and stood up. She started to gather everything she would need for the mission. She put her backpack on her back and made her way down the stairs. At the bottom of the stairs, Sarada found her mom there waiting on her. "Whatever happens on this mission, I know your dad and the Hokage will not let anything happen to you or the team. Please don't be angry at me. It is hard for me too, and every time I want to talk to you it is never the right time, and every time you are demanding answers from me, I never seem to have the right answers. I thought the Hokage would be a better help, but maybe I was wrong about that. Sarada, please do not take anger on this mission with you." Sakura extended her arms to give her daughter a hug. Sarada just took a step toward her mom, but did not hug her back, once again. "Sure," Sarada said in sarcastic tone. "Be safe." Sakura released her daughter from the hug and stepped out of her way. "I love you, Sarada," Sakura said, trying to be cheerful, but Sarada could tell that she was forcing herself. "I know, Mom." Sarada made a small smile, which they both knew was also forced. Sarada walked to the door. She opened the door and turned to her mom. "Tell him I miss him, please." Sakura held her hands together and Sarada saw even from the distance the emotion of missing Sasuke in her eyes. Sarada nodded. Sarada wondered if her mom even fought to be a part of this mission. She knew her mom was opinionative and when she wanted something to go her way she would fight for it. She knew that her mom was only a pushover with her because she didn't want to push Sarada away from her. She knew even with the Hokage there was no shying away from fighting her point to him. She thought how annoying it would be being her mom did come. Her mom and the Hokage, and Boruto. She half laughed thinking how badly would I want to meet my dad if I had to put up with those three on a mission. Sarada walked down the street feeling unsure of herself. Her mom had no idea how angry she felt, and yet Sarada couldn't completely understand how she could be so angry with the Hokage but want to be close to him again. Sarada turned a corner and decided to take the long way to the meeting point. She did not want to get there too early and be stuck listening to Boruto cheerfully go on about their friendship. She also didn't want to find Mitsuki there questioning her Sharingan. He hadn't had a chance to ask anything about it, but it was just the sort of thing he would obsess over. Sarada turned on another corner and found her footsteps echoing on a narrow walkway. Sarada reached in her back pocket and grabbed her headband once more. She stared down at it. Her thumb traced the outline of the hidden leaf symbol. Sarada took a couple more steps and turned the corner. She had been fighting putting the headband back on. She leaned against the building behind her. She felt a dizzying feeling of déjà vu looking up at where her wandering had brought her. She looked over at the doors on the building and realized she was at the very building the Hokage had led her to months ago. Sarada looked around as her heartbeat quickened. Her arms fell to her side and she stared at the door right in front of her. She dropped her headband to the ground. It made a clink on the ground, but Sarada was too lost in thought thinking about what happened that day on the other side of that door. She remembered the feel of Naruto's fingers against her lips. The way he caressed her jawline with his thumb. Sarada's fingers twitched at her side. Naruto's lustful growl as he said, "Call me Naruto." Sarada bit her lip and for the first time all day her cheeks felt warm as she thought of the Hokage. Sarada. The Hokage turned the corner stepping on her headband and almost knocking her over not knowing she was there till it was too late. He stepped off her headband and crouched down to get it for her. He looked up at her. "What are you doing here?" The Hokage stood up. Sarada looked over at the Hokage, and then at the door across from her. She looked down at the ground. I. Sarada's eyes filled with tears instantly. "I don't know." She turned away and started to walk away. "Hey, Sarada, wait." Naruto took a step and reached out, put a hand on her shoulder. Sarada turned quickly to face him, making his hand slip from her shoulder. Sarada looked harshly at him in the same way she did in the Hokage's office. "Don't touch me," Sarada blurted forcefully. "Sarada." Naruto stopped his motion toward her. He looked over her face. His eyebrows furrowed, and his hand wrapping around her headband in his hand. "Why did you come here?" His tone concerned, and his eyes glistening in the light from the doorstep light. "I just told you. I don't know." She turned around and started walking away. "I don't believe you." Naruto spoke up. He clenched his jaw waiting for her response. Sarada stopped walking. She brought both her hands to fists at her sides. "What the hell is going on with me? I don't want to be touched by him, but I keep thinking about it. Then I aimlessly wander here. Please, Sarada." The Hokage's voice was quieter than it was a moment ago. Sarada turned her head slightly, hearing the hurt in Naruto's voice. "You don't want to start a mission feeling like this, do you?" The Hokage's eyes fixed on her posture. "How would you know how I feel?" Sarada turned her head away from him and walked off. "As usual, we are waiting on Boruto and his dad," Mitsuki announced to Sarada as Sarada met up with Konohamaru and Mitsuki at the entrance of the Hidden Leaf Village. Konohamaru was leaned against the stone wall opposite of Mitsuki. Konohamaru was holding a scroll in his hands. It looked like he was confused trying to figure out the writing on it. He has been trying to figure out that scroll for the last 20 minutes. Mitsuki looked at Konohamaru. Sarada nodded. She leaned against the wall beside Mitsuki. She was surprised Boruto was not here already, considering his excitement about missions. Question. Mitsuki looked at Sarada. "I don't want to talk about it." Sarada shook her head. "How do you even know what I am going to ask?" Mitsuki smirked. "Let me guess." Sarada brought her index finger to her chin and tapped her chin a couple times. "My eyes." Sarada's index finger tapped the frames of her glasses. "That was a lucky guess." Mitsuki's smirk grew into a smile. "Oh, just one question, please." Sarada stared at Mitsuki, wondering if that was his attempt at begging. Mitsuki looked over at the village in front of him. "Why now, Sarada?" Mitsuki proceeded to ask. "What are you talking about?" Sarada looked at the village as well. She noticed the village had settled down so much now that it was getting later in the night, but she could still hear people in the distance. "Sharingan, we all know how you feel about your father. I predicted you would be anxious and even excited for the chance to finally meet your father." Mitsuki's tone seemed just as indifferent as it normally did. Sarada was caught off guard by the direction of the questions. She expected Mitsuki to question the site, the chakra, or how it works, not the reason why it happened. I was mad. Sarada's words were quiet. Mad. Mitsuki repeated the emotion. And angry. Sarada continued. She sighed heavily. The last person she ever thought she would admit her feelings to, and here she was telling him. Angry. Mitsuki repeated again. This time there was an intrigued inflection in the way he said angry. I am angry all the time. I hate that my family is torn between the shadows that my dad prowls in, and the way my mom avoids providing answers to me. I am angry that my mom thinks she can just hand off her parenting to another person because she doesn't know how to look me in the eye and tell me, it's complicated. Sarada turned her head to look at Mitsuki. Mitsuki was still looking on at the village that was slowly settling down. She looked up at the stars. No one understands how I feel. No one wants to understand how I feel. They just deflect or talk about what a great guy my dad was. To some, they might even just see me as an ordinary teen feeling like every other emotional teenager does about their family. Sarada raised an eyebrow thinking about the words she just said. She thought about Boruto and how he was always whining about his family. She was different from him, because she kept most of her feelings in. She admitted she could be rude and outspoken, but she never complained about her family to people. She usually kept all that in and to herself. She was different from Boruto in that way. How could anyone really know what it is like being me? Sarada lowered her head. You are not ordinary. You are an Uchiha. Mitsuki looked at Sarada. And then I finally get to the point where I feel a little happier, and I start letting go of the irritation of not having a dad in my life. I started smiling more. Sarada thought about the scent of Naruto still lingering in her room. She turned her body to look toward Konohamaru. She bit the inside of her lip. She watched the leaves on the trees as they rustled. You do still want to meet him? Mitsuki stayed the way he was standing. Sarada shrugged. I do, but why now? Sarada felt the breeze over her arms, and she got goosebumps. I am not understanding, Mitsuki spoke bluntly. If you are happy now, isn't this the best time? Sarada frowned thinking about what Mitsuki said. She let the words sink in. Oh, finally. Konohamaru waved, and Sarada looked over to see Boruto and the Hokage walking quickly toward them. This kid, the Hokage said jokingly. He stuck his foot out in front of Boruto as he was quickly walking. Boruto missed the swiftness of his dad and tripped over the Hokage's foot. Whoa. Boruto caught himself before he fell. Boruto looked over at Mitsuki and Sarada. Mitsuki walked over to Boruto and stood beside him. Sarada stayed where she was. She turned her attention away from them and looked over at Konohamaru. We could have been here sooner, the Hokage started to explain. But my dad has to always be late, Boruto interrupted. He from his dad's attempt to ruffle Boruto's hair. We should keep on schedule, then. Konohamaru tapped the scroll on his fly jacket pocket. Yes. We better get going. The Hokage nodded. Konohamaru turned and started walking down the main road leading away from the hidden leaf. Mitsuki hurried after him to catch up. Boruto followed Mitsuki. Sarada figured if she was going to be with these people she would rather be in the back. She watched them all go past her. She smirked seeing Boruto flash by her. She waited to see the Hokage pass her, so she could just follow behind. She noticed he hadn't walked past her yet. She turned to see what was holding him up. Instead she found him standing beside her holding up her headband to her. Here. You left it. His tone mature and serious. Sarada reached her hand out and took the headband. You should wear it, Yano. He forced a smile. Sarada didn't say anything. She looked down at her headband. She ran her finger along the smooth edge of the metal plate. The Hokage stood still for a moment. I cannot take back the decisions that were made, but I can tell you we had reason to wait till you were with the team to talk about it. When you are ready to listen, let me know. The Hokage waited for Sarada to reply, but instead she just nodded. The Hokage walked past her to join the rest of the team. He would have liked her to have calmed down enough by now to finish telling her everything he intended on telling her earlier. He had no idea her emptiness of not having a father in her life was so strong that it would wake the Sharingan, and yet Shikamaru thought there was a small chance it could have happened. Sarada watched the Hokage walk away. She started to unfold the material of the headband, and as she did her thumb brushed over a soft lump tucked away in the headband. Sarada slowly pulled it out from under the material to realize it was an orange flower. An orange flower like the one that was left on her nightstand this morning. Sarada's lips parted in surprise. She looked up at everyone walking ahead of her. The Hokage was looking back at her. The darkness of the night made it hard to tell, but Sarada thought she saw him smiling. Sarada lowered her head to hide the small smile that crept across her face. She put the flower back in her headband. She started walking toward everyone. She caught up with them in no time. She thought about her conversation with Mitsuki as they all embarked on this mission. She thought about her happiness. What really made her happy? Her thoughts seemed to take over as she fell in line with the team around her. She found her eyes drifting to the Hokage's cloak trailing behind him as he quickly moved alongside Konohamaru. She recalled putting the orange flower in the pocket of the Hokage's clone's shirt when she was on the wedding mission. She recalled the feeling she got the first time she saw the little brightly colored flowers in the flower shop. Water break, Konohamaru announced, glancing over his shoulder. The Hokage and Konohamaru slowed their pace. The three teens slowed down too. The Hokage and Konohamaru talked amongst themselves with he backs to the teens. Mitsuki watched them, wondering what they could be talking about. Boruto made a why bother expression to Mitsuki's efforts to know what they were talking about. Dawn will come quickly, Mitsuki said, looking over at his teammates. Then we shouldn't be lingering around here drinking water. Boruto stared at his water. Sarada listened to Mitsuki and Boruto, but her eyes were not on them. She was looking at the adults just like Mitsuki. That is not what I meant. Mitsuki shook his head and looked at Boruto. What did you mean? Boruto put his water away and adjusted his headband slightly. Before Mitsuki could explain himself, Konohamaru and the Hokage turned to them. Sarada took this opportunity to find her water and take small sips. This is where we split up. The Hokage held up his hands to his chest and created two shadow clones. Clones, Boruto whined. One will accompany you, Konohamaru. He will be ahead of you in case anything changes in our mission. Take Boruto and Mitsuki. The Hokage nodded to one of the clones. That clone smirked and walked up to Boruto and ruffled his hair under his hand. Boruto swatted the clone's hand. Let's get going. Konohamaru stayed focused. Mitsuki did not question them. He walked to Konohamaru and off he went with Boruto and the clone. The four of them went on ahead. And, the Hokage looked at his other clone. Find Sasuke. The clone nodded. He turned and walked off the path and went in a new direction. Sarada watched the clone going off in another direction. She couldn't remember if clones were a part of the discussion about the mission plans. She had to admit to herself that she was a little hazy about the details of the mission as it is. She took in a deep breath as she turned her attention to the real Hokage. The Hokage walked to her, leaving just a couple feet between them. He put a hand on his chest. The rest of the mission, you cannot leave my side unless I tell you otherwise. He looked over her face, trying to read her reaction. Sarada didn't say anything. Before we go on and catch up with the others, I need to finish explaining what I couldn't tell you earlier this evening. Naruto took another step toward her. He fought, putting his hand on her shoulder. He kept his eyes on her. Sarada wasn't sure what to say, so she nodded. Even once we have found your father and helped him out of the situation he is in, he more than likely will not return to the Hidden Leaf. In fact, I can pretty much guarantee it. Sarada shrugged. You're 16 and old enough to make decisions for yourself, right? The Hokage reached his hand from his chest to her shoulder. Sarada watched his hand and glanced up at him, nodding her head. Part of the reasoning behind not telling you was something of your mom's reluctancy. She was worried that if you saw your father, got to spend time with him, took interest in him, you would want to stay with him. That seems silly. Why would she think something like that? Sarada raised an eyebrow. Sarada had wondered what it was like to be with him. When she was younger, she remembered drawing pictures of herself with him and making up stories about him being with her. The Hokage sighed. She has her reasons. She would not tell me everything, but she said she is worried that you will see yourself in him and think that you two need to be away from the village, especially if your father tells you things he knows, if he gets ideas in your head about being away from the village. Naruto's fingers moved along her shoulder and down to her bicep. Sarada looked down at his fingers. He instinctively caressed her arm with his thumb. I don't even know him. Half of the time just thinking about him or talking about him makes me angry or mad. Would he even recognize me? Would he even let me tag along with him? I don't know anything about him except what you or mom has told me. Sarada looked up into the Hokage's eyes. It is just a concern that was brought to our attention. We just want what is best, ya know. The Hokage said quietly. His fingers slowly moved down Sarada's arm until their hands met. He lightly held her hand. Sarada took a deep breath at the physical touch from the Hokage. The biggest concern was Yurin Uchiha. The Hokage took a step closer. Their bodies so close to each other now. The Hokage's other hand found the small of her back, and he slowly pushed her body close to his to fill in the gap. The Hokage lowered his lips to the top of her ear and whispered, letting his lips brush against her ear. Your eyes are very special. Sarada slowly turned her head to brush her ear against his lips. Her arms grew goosebumps hearing him talk to her like that. His whisper, this moment. The conversation seemed to melt away as she felt her body so close to him. The Hokage moved his hand up her back, and into her hair, his fingers found the back of her neck. The Hokage looked into Sarada's eyes. We couldn't let anything happen to you. He smirked looking into her eyes. Sarada's lips parted as she found herself completely speechless. She wanted to say something, but she couldn't think of anything to say. She stood staring into the Hokage's eyes. Her heart fluttering in her chest. Her hands just hanging at her side. She smiled up at him. She could feel warmth in her cheeks and was thankful for the night to hide her blushing. The Hokage leaned in and kissed her softly on the lips and pulled out slowly with a smirk. Sarada, no one was trying to upset you. He wrapped his arms around her and held her close. Sarada's hands found the edges of the Hokage's cloak on his chest, and she pulled his body closer into a kiss, and parted her lips encouraging him to deepen the kiss. The Hokage let out a muffled groan at the feeling of Sarada wanting him again. His hands held her body close to his. He kissed her back, his tongue brushing her lips. Sarada's hands moved to his ribs, and down his sides. Her fingers grabbed the fabric hems of his orange and black shirt at his sides. Sarada. Naruto moaned against her lips. His voice deep and raspy. Sarada looked up into his eyes. Their lips just inches from each other now. Sarada took a deep breath. He cheeks burning at hearing her name being said like that. Naruto kissed her forehead and rested his chin to her forehead. Sarada closed her eyes and pushed her forehead slowly along his jawline, until her face rested against his chest. She breathed in deeply, taking in the scent of his cloak. Sarada lost herself in his touch. She forgot they were standing in the middle of a forest and at any time anyone could come by and see them. She bit her lip, feeling his heartbeat against her ear. She let out a longing sigh. She recalled this same feeling many months ago, only this time she didn't care that he knew her feelings for him. She had struggled with being mad at him all day, and now she was here in his arms. She wrapped her arms around Naruto's waist. Her whole body covered by his white and red Hokage cloak, except for her back which Naruto had his hands pressed against. There was a rustle in the leaves of the trees. Naruto's ears perked as he found himself back in the forest, no longer lost in the moment. Remember what I told you. You must stay by my side no matter what. His tone changed as he instructed Sarada. Sarada lowered her hands and took a small step back. She hadn't even been paying attention to anything around them. She nodded at him. Naruto closed his eyes. Bring his hands to his chest, ready to make the shadow clone hand seal. Sarada gulped down the anticipation inside her. She had no idea really what was going on. Her senses were thrown off by the fact that she was just being held by the Hokage, kissed by the Hokage, and her ears were still recovering from the moan of her name on his lips. When Naruto opened his eyes, his whole body changed in appearance. Sarada felt the warmth of his chakra surround her. Her mouth fell open in surprise as the Hokage's body seemed to be in flames. Her eyes widened looking over his face. His pupils were now slits, kind of resembling sage mode. Her eyes noticed the thickness of his whiskers, now like slim long rectangles on his cheek, and less like animal whiskers. Sarada's eyes couldn't help but look at the rest of him. His body brightly light up. Collar bones outlined with grayish black. Her eyes trailed down his body, still amazed by what she saw. She looked back up at the Hokage. He smirked and winked at her. "Stay close," he breathed, how voice filled with excitement. He turned on his heel and stood still with his hands ready for a clone jutsu. Moments later, ninjas came from the trees before them. Sarada stood beside the Hokage. He did not flinch at the appearance of the ninjas, but instead looked over at Sarada and nodded. Sarada gulped, looking over the ninja approaching her. She was not entirely sure how helpful she would be. After all, he is the legendary hero of the Hidden Leaf. "You have two choices. Tell me where Sasuke is and leave us be. Or," but before the Hokage could finish, a kunai came towards them. The Hokage scoffed at their attempts. An orange flash wrapped around Sarada and blocked the kunai from harming them. Sarada's eyes widened again at the sight. She turned to look up at the Hokage. She saw the orange return behind the Hokage. She saw that it looked as though his Hokage cloak had ripped into 9 slivers of flame-colored tails standing up behind the Hokage. Sarada turned her attention back to the ninjas in front of her. She tried to think what to do to help in this situation, but she found herself still amazed and in awe of the Hokage's abilities. She could feel his chakra more now than ever, and it felt warm. As the ninjas approached quicker, Sarada stood ready to defend herself. The Hokage created 4 clones, and off they ran to fight the ninjas in the distance. Sarada took a couple steps away from the Hokage toward a ninja getting closer. She dodged the first attempts to hit her. She quickly gained an advantage on him by being quick on her feet and delivered a strong, painful punch to his stomach. The ninja groaned and stumbled back. Sarada repeated the punch once, twice, and on the third time the ninja fell to the ground. Sarada brought her foot up and dropped it swiftly down on his head, knocking him unconscious. She glanced around to see the clones fighting for the real Hokage, while he stood looking out at everything going on. Sarada saw another ninja approaching and grabbed 2 shurikens from her pouch. She threw them and turned her body slightly, turning her back to the Hokage, who was moving toward the approaching ninja. Both Sarada and the Hokage fought alongside each other to fight off the attack. Sarada looked over to see the Hokage's tails of his cloak fighting off the last 2 ninjas just feet from them. Sarada turned her attention back to the ninja in front of her. Her hands grabbing the fabric on his chest. She pulled his body down to her knee, knocking him out along with the 3 that she left laying on the ground. "Where is he?" The Hokage growled at one of the ninjas that he held tightly in his hands. The ninja's eyes were wide and in shock. Sarada turned to see if there was anyone else. She stared at the Hokage. She could swear she heard an animal growl in the Hokage's voice. She gulped. She had never seen the Hokage like this. Everything happening these last 24 hours were incredible that Sarada wouldn't be surprised at all if she really did hear an animal growl in the Hokage. "Sasuke," the Hokage growled again. "Where is he?" Sarada took a deep breath, seeing the seriousness in the Hokage's face. His eyes narrowed. She remembered the stories she heard growing up about how the 7th Hokage saved the Hidden Leaf so many times. She wondered if he had this power when he did it. She turned her head to look at the clones. As she turned her head, she saw the clones vanish. There was a long sigh from the ninja in the Hokage's hands, and Sarada heard his body fall to the ground. "Let's get going." The Hokage's voice returned to its usual tone. Sarada looked over slowly to see his color return. His cloak was back to normal. Sarada bit her lip. She nodded. "They won't tell us." The Hokage looked over at the horizon. "And the sun will be up soon." Naruto looked down at Sarada and a small smile crossed his lips. Sarada brought a hand up to her headband and pushed it slightly into her hair a little more. She smirked at him. She was still amazed by the warmth of his chakra, the accuracy of his senses, and the form the Hokage just took. She looked down at the ground. The Hokage placed a hand on her shoulder. The strength of your mom. The Hokage reminded Sarada once again. So, I have been told. Sarada smiled, still looking down. Let's go. The Hokage lifted his hand from her shoulder, and they headed in the direction that the ninjas were coming from. Sarada stayed at his side. Hokage. Sarada spoke after half an hour of silence. The Hokage looked at her with a smile. Will we make it to Konohamaru-sensei in time? Sarada followed closely as the Hokage hopped over the large tree roots that blanketed the ground beneath them. The Hokage chuckled. He continued to look ahead. Don't worry about that. He knows what to do if we don't make it in time. The Hokage leapt up a tree trunk running up. Sarada followed him. She was not as good at it as he was, but she managed to reach the set of branches moments after him. But you told him to wait there for us. Sarada looked over at the horizon and saw the faint sliver of light coming up. That is what the clones are for. The Hokage stood looking out over the open field in the distance. He saw the outline of a run-down building. His hands rested on his hips. The breeze from up in the tree rippled over his cloak, making it wave in at the ends. Sarada placed a hand on the tree trunk and looked up at the Hokage. She couldn't help but admire the way he stood without a worry, it seemed. She glanced out in the distance where he too was looking. She thought to herself if Naruto had any intention on meeting up with Konohamaru at this point. She wondered where exactly her father was if Naruto was taking things so casually right at this moment. Come on then. We are almost there. The Hokage smirked over at Sarada. Sarada smiled at him. The Hokage took her hand and pulled her body into his arms and leapt from the tree branch to the ground. Sarada only had a moment to react. She put an arm around his shoulder and leaned in against his body. As they landed, the Hokage grinned, putting her on her feet, and smirked, looking over her body as she straightened out her shirt. Sarada looked up and the Hokage took a runner's stance, much like Boruto did when he was looking to race someone. Let's go. He chuckled. Sarada rolled her eyes, but she was smiling. Got to hurry. Come on now. The Hokage pointed to ground beside him. I don't even know where we are going. Sarada said, realizing that she probably sounded stupid saying that. She was in the Hokage's office when Shikamaru discussed it, and with Konohamaru when he discussed it, and yet she stood here right beside the Hokage with no clue. That building over there, the Hokage laughed, pointing across the field. Sarada blushed at the Hokage laughing at her. She raised an eyebrow looking at the Hokage. The Hokage pointed to the ground again and smirked. Sarada rolled her eyes one more time but did as the Hokage wanted. She felt silly doing this right now, but she took the same stance and smiled widely. He looked ahead at the building and then at Sarada. Sarada gave him a ready look and they both dug their feet into the ground and sprinted toward the building. As Sarada and the Hokage approached the run-down building, the Hokage held a hand out at his side to indicate to Sarada to slow down to a quick walk. Both of them saw Konohamaru standing looking toward them. Boruto and Mitsuki crouched down at Konohamaru's feet taking a break. Sarada's steps following right behind the Hokage as she looked around trying to take in the sight of their meeting point. Boruto and Mitsuki grinned looking up at Sarada at the Hokage. They stood up. Boruto grinned widely at Sarada. Sarada raised an eyebrow at Boruto's grin. Konohamaru crossed his arms over his chest and gave the Hokage a serious expression. Anything? The Hokage asked. Nothing. Konohamaru looked over at Boruto and Mitsuki. Well, your clone ran off. Boruto rolled his eyes. Told us to stay here. Sarada looked around, remembering that there were 2 clones of the Hokage around here somewhere. She wondered if they knew anything about what was going on. She looked up at the Hokage, who was now closing his eyes with a serious look on his face. Boruto puffed his cheeks at his dad when his eyes were closed and turned around to look around the outside of the building where they stood. Sarada walked over to Boruto and elbowed him in the ribs. Don't be so disrespectful, she said in an undertone. Boruto looked over at Sarada and made a who cares kind of face. What does it matter? Boruto kicked a rock towards the trees outlining the perimeter. Friend or rival? Sarada turned to Boruto and smiled. If I said friend, Boruto brought a hand behind his head and leaned his head against his hand. Then you have to stop making faces at the Hokage and talking disrespectfully to him. Sarada smirked and looked down at the ground. Rival. Boruto lowered his head and grinned up at Sarada. I will kick your. Sarada made a fist and motioned to punch Boruto in the face. Boruto winced as he a little further out of her reach. He stood up and looked over at his dad. He looked to Sarada and sighed. Let's go. We will give the inside a look. The Hokage interrupted Boruto and Sarada. Sarada turned to the Hokage, grabbing Boruto by the sleeve of his jacket. Boruto pulled his arm to himself and looked at Sarada with a smile. Sarada raised an eyebrow at him. Good to see you two are not fighting with each other. Mitsuki walked alongside Sarada. Konohamaru watched the three teens walk ahead. The five of them walked around the building toward the front entrance. Sarada looked over the exterior of the building, wondering what she should expect. Her eyes shifted from window to window. As they turned the corner, they found the two clones of the Hokage fighting two ninjas to the ground. The first clone had the ninja on the ground and proceeded to press his knee onto the middle of his back as he pinned him down. The other clone had lifted the ninja up by the front of his outfit and grunted as he forcefully dropped him to the ground. The ninja groaned in pain as he hit the ground. Both clones looked over at the five. One clone smirked, and the other dusted off his hands and jerked his head toward the building. He is here. The clone standing up grinned. I can feel he is here too. The real Hokage said in an agreeable tone. So, let's go. Boruto held a fist up. Both clones looked at Boruto with a grin. They disappeared moments later. The five-person team walked into the building to find it looked just as run down on the inside as it did on the outside. There were boxes overturned, and tables with dust accumulated on them. There were stairs leading toward the upper floors of the building. They all stood examining the room and taking in the sight. It looked to Sarada like a building someone would use for storage. You could clearly see all the way across without any rooms sectioning off the first floor. Konohamaru, take Mitsuki and Boruto to the upper floors. Be careful, the Hokage instructed. Konohamaru nodded, doing as he was told. Mitsuki continued to examine the floor as Boruto and Konohamaru walked a little quicker than him. Mitsuki followed them up the steps. Sarada, stay close. The Hokage turned to Sarada. According to intel gathered, this building was used at one point for ninja tech research. It looks abandoned, Sarada said slowly, looking for any sign of technology. My guess is that whatever they were researching was not something they wanted anyone to know about. Your dad found a lead that led him here. It might seem abandoned, but don't let your eyes deceive you. The Hokage turned and motioned for Sarada to stay at his side. As they walked across the open room, Sarada found papers scattered along the ground. She looked further along the walls and found a small pathway. She glanced at the Hokage and realized he had seen it too. The both of them walked to the pathway. Stairs, the Hokage said in thought. He and Sarada exchanged a look of curiosity. Sarada followed the Hokage down the stairs. It got dimmer and dimmer as they reached the bottom of the steps. Sarada started to feel a cool draft come over her as she and the Hokage stepped into the room before them. Standing across the room was a ninja in dark attire. Sarada could not make out much about his appearance in this dark of light, except the eyes. Even from the distance there was no mistaking what she was seeing. So Suigetsu was not patient enough, the voice spoke, and sent the hairs on Sarada's arm standing. He thought for sure this time you needed us. The Hokage spoke seriously. You. Need you. And who did you bring, kids? The ninja scoffed. Not just any kids, Sasuke. The Hokage put a hand on Sarada's shoulder. Sarada looked up at the Hokage, and then looked again at the ninja across the room. The two eyes looking at across at them seemed to change focus to Sarada directly. Sarada gulped down her nervousness and put her hands behind her back. She tried to stay calm and keep cool. This strange ninja across the room is my dad. One Sharinganai and other, Rinnegan. Hiding in the shadows. Sarada shifted on her feet, looking back into the eyes in the shadows. It was strange to her, but something made her feel drawn to him. Uchiha. Sasuke's voice rang in Sarada's ears. Is that Dad? Sarada blurted before Sasuke or Naruto could say anything. Sarada took a step toward Sasuke. Where is Sakura, Naruto? Sasuke asked, watching his daughter take steps toward him. Sarada looked over her shoulder at the Hokage. The Hokage gave a small smile to encourage Sarada to go to her dad. The Hokage took small steps behind her to ensure that she was still near him. Sarada looked to her dad, and her eyes looked around to take in the surroundings of the room. Her eyes trailed to the ground where she found several bodies collapsed around her dad. She looked up at her dad. In the shadows of this room she could not see any harm done to her dad. A part of Sarada was not surprised about that though. Her mom always made her dad sound so strong and powerful. She sat this mission out. This was a job for the new Team 7. The Hokage grinned. Something tells me Sakura did not just sit this one out. Sasuke closed his eyes momentarily. Good ol' Sakura, Naruto said nostalgically. Sarada took a couple more steps toward him. She noticed how dark his hair was even in this dim of light. She took a deep breath, trying to remind herself to breath. When Sasuke's eyes opened, the color had faded, returning them to their ordinary dark eyes. Sarada blinked several times, seeing how easily he had control over his visual prowess. She looked over at the Hokage, and then back at her dad. She got a thought in her head about asking her dad to help her control her Sharingan and teaching her justice of their clan. Sarada became overwhelmed with thoughts of things she wanted to tell her dad and wanted her dad to tell her. New Team 7, you said. Sasuke looked over to Naruto, and then to Sarada. Me. The Hokage's oldest. And Sarada thought for a moment. Well, the third member is named Mitsuki. Boruto. Sasuke said in the same cold way he once said Naruto's name when Sasuke and Naruto were younger. Sarada nodded. Footsteps on the stairs made Naruto turn on his heel, and he smiled widely when he realized it was Konohamaru, Boruto, and Mitsuki. Boruto impatiently looked past his dad, eager to see what was going on. Mitsuki's eyes seemed to light up at the sight of a pureblood Uchiha. Konohamaru sighed, relieved that there was no one left to fight. The room was silent, and Sarada felt it lingering much too long. So, Dad, Sarada smirked. What happens now? Asked the Hokage. Sasuke shot a look to Naruto, and Naruto groaned. Did we miss the fight? Boruto sounded disappointed. There was no fight. Sasuke sounded amused by Boruto's disappointment. Hokage. Sarada looked over at Naruto, and then at Konohamaru. Didn't hurt you at all? Naruto asked, watching Sarada stand beside her dad. He could see so much Uchiha in Sarada now more than ever. Nothing I need mention. Sasuke looked over at his daughter. They both exchanged smirks, and Sarada looked over at everyone else. She had a smile on her face. Boruto grinned back at her. Then, Naruto looked to Konohamaru. You, Boruto and Mitsuki, give the building one more good look. Seriously. Boruto glared at his dad. There is nothing here. Let's go. Konohamaru grabbed Boruto by his jacket and pulled him toward the door. Go, Boruto. Naruto shot his son a stern fatherly look. Reluctantly and annoyed, Boruto left the room with his sensei and Mitsuki. Sarada rolled her eyes in Boruto's resistance. She looked over the Hokage's face. She could see that he had something on her mind. She looked into his eyes, and both their eyes met, and they gazed into each other's eyes for a moment. To Sarada, that moment seemed to last forever. While the room was not well lit, she could tell those big blue eyes were lost in thought. Why did you really make a mission out of this, Naruto? Sasuke watched the doorway to the room. After a moment he looked to Naruto, who was staring at Sarada. Sasuke looked at Sarada. Sasuke placed his right hand on his daughter's shoulder. Sarada snapped out of her thought of the Hokage and looked up at her dad. Naruto looked up at Sasuke. You, Sasuke. Naruto's eyebrows furrowed as thoughts surfaced in his mind. You knew I did not need you to come. Sasuke's hand left his daughter's shoulder, and Sasuke took quick steps to Naruto. Naruto held out a fist to Sasuke, and they both bumped fists. Sarada watched, wondering what Naruto could be thinking about right now. She thought about her mom being at home, worried about her on this mission. Sarada felt a little confused by everything. Everyone involved in this mission in the Leaf Village made it sound dangerous. Did Naruto lead everyone on to think this was some kind of rescue mission for nothing? Sarada felt a little let down, thinking that she made a fool of herself so many times these last 2 days. She got emotional and angry over something that wasn't even dangerous at all. Something she didn't need worry so much over. Your family needs you, Sasuke. Naruto lowered his hand and looked past his best friend to look at Sarada. Sasuke did not say anything but grinned instead. She has questions. Naruto looked back at Sasuke. His tone lowered and sounded fond toward his friend. Things Sakura and I can't give her answers to. Things Sakura refuses to talk about. So, you came all the way out here for? Sasuke looked back at his daughter and turned back to Naruto. A family reunion. Sasuke chuckled at the actions of his friend. Naruto sighed. He turned on his heel. He raised a hand up and slightly waved it. Sarada, I will find the others and we will meet you outside. Don't believe anything he says about me. Sarada watched the Hokage leave the room. She froze, not realizing she would be left alone with her father right away. Sasuke shook his head and turned to his daughter. He smiled. Sarada raised an eyebrow to her dad but didn't say anything. She struggled with if this moment felt awkward, or not. She felt drawn to him. She didn't doubt that, and yet she hadn't spent time with him ever that she could remember, so in a way it kind of did feel awkward to Sarada. Did he really drag you all the way out here for this? Sasuke asked. Sarada shrugged. Not a chance. Shikamaru would let him just walk out of the village for that. Sasuke glanced toward the doorway, and then looked back at Sarada. Sarada smirked. Unless, Sasuke looked curiously at Sarada. Sarada looked at her dad, confused. After a moment Sasuke nodded thoughtfully and then, like Naruto, turned on his heel. Come, walk with me, Sarada. Sasuke led Sarada up the stairs to the main room where Sarada has originally entered with the Hokage. Sarada followed her dad, keeping a step or two behind him. She felt a twinge in her stomach thinking about what he could be thinking. She wished he would say something already, or even look over at her, but no. He stayed silent as they walked. The only sound from his was the ever so subtle sound of his feet hitting the floor as she strode over the abandoned paperwork that littered the floor. She thought carefully about what things something like Sasuke might find important to him. Sakura. Would he really care that much about her at this point though? He at least mentioned her when talking to the Hokage. What else? He seemed happy to see me. I mean, he smiled. Smiling is a good thing, right? Me, Sarada, what about me could possibly make him interested now? He has had my whole life to take interest in me. He has had all these years to finally meet me, Sarada thought as she walked outside. At the warmth of the sun hit Sarada's face, she glanced up, finally shaking the thought loose in her mind. She looked to see Konohamaru and Naruto crouched over a scroll. Boruto and Mitsuki quickly walked up to the two Uchihas. Boruto looked over Sasuke's face, letting a smirk of approval give away his obvious amusement with seeing Sasuke. Mitsuki just stood analyzing Sasuke. His eyes taking in everything he could see. Are you and my dad really best friends? Boruto asked enthusiastically. That's what he tells everyone. Sasuke looked at Boruto's goofy smile. But you used to be rivals, right? Boruto looked over at his dad, and then looked at Sarada with a smirk. Give it a rest. Sarada waved a hand at Boruto. Rivals? Sasuke raised an eyebrow slightly and looked over the young Uzumaki's face. Sarada let out a hey, at interest Sasuke took in the word. You know, always trying to be better than the other. Boruto lifted his hands to his chest and took a sloppy taijutsu pose and playfully grinned as he fought with the air in front of him for a moment. Boruto, Sarada started to feel irritated. Is that what he tells everyone too? Sasuke sounded amused. He watched Boruto's fight the air and let out a chuckle. Boruto stopped for a moment and smiled up at Sasuke. My mom actually. Boruto nodded. Sarada looked up at her dad, and then at Boruto. She expected Sasuke to be annoyed by Boruto already. She shifted on her feet and looked around. She wished Boruto would have just kept his mouth shut. She wanted to know what was on her dad's mind already. Ah hey, Lady Hinata. Sasuke smiled. Boruto's eyes lit up hearing Sasuke acknowledge who his mom was. Sarada started drowning out the conversation beside her. She stared across the abandoned lot at the Hokage who was now standing exchanging words with Konohamaru. She thought about what Shikamaru or Naruto would find so important that Naruto would have to bring Sarada to Sasuke. What was so urgent that Naruto would tell Sasuke that his family needs him? She bit her lip in thought. She wished Boruto would shut up so she could just hear her father out. Sarada's eyes focusing on the red characters on the back of the Hokage's cloak. She wished people would just give her answers instead of her feeling like she always needed to question things. Your father has left out some details, it seems. Sasuke looked over at Sarada. She had been quiet for a while. Yeah, I did not believe him either. I thought if I ever met you I would have to ask. Boruto said smugly. He glanced at Sarada and realized she was lost in thought again. Hey Sarada. Boruto tilted her head to block out whatever she was fixed on. His sideways grin and wink made Sarada blink. She looked up at her dad and realized that both her dad and Boruto were staring at her. Well, Boruto spoke up. What is it this time? Nothing. Sarada cleared her throat and looked at Boruto with a serious expression. You have been doing that a lot lately. Mitsuki stared at Sarada. Sarada had forgotten that Mitsuki was even standing there. Sarada stood up straighter and looked at Mitsuki clearly annoyed. Boruto, Mitsuki, come on. We are going to perimeter check. Konohamaru motioned of the two boys to go. Naruto ruffled the hair on Boruto's head and Boruto slapped his hand away from his hair. Typical. Sasuke spoke calmly. That boy of yours talks almost as much as you, if not more. Sasuke let a smirk creep across his face. I know, Naruto sighed, Kakashi-sensei has told me many times already. Tell me Naruto, Sasuke's eyes serious. Sarada looked up at the Hokage. Her eyes looking over his face. She couldn't help but feel that butterfly feeling in her stomach for a moment. Her ears felt warm. Sarada gulped as she tried to keep her cool. Last thing she wanted was to be blushing right now. You have a family, Sasuke. You can't run away forever. Naruto smiled. I am not running, Naruto. Sasuke narrowed his eyes at his best friend. Sarada bit the inside of her lip looking from Naruto to her dad. She wondered if they both always seemed so short with each other all the time. She did recall her mom saying that Naruto and her dad fought more than they did talk. Seeing them talking now kind of explained a little as to why fighting was their way of communicating though. She noticed the irritability in her father, and the way Naruto always seemed to smile after saying something. Sarada continued to watch them both. Talk to her. Naruto smiled again and tilted his head to indicate he was talking about Sarada. Konohamaru will keep the others busy for a while. I will leave you be. I planned on it anyway. Sasuke turned his back to Naruto and walked inside the building. Sarada watched him disappear into the building. Back in the building, Sarada sighed. She turned to Naruto and they both looked into each other's eyes. Naruto took a step closer to her and crouched down slightly. He crouched down slightly to be eye level with Sarada. He has already figured out that your eyes possess the Sharingan. Naruto spoke in a hushed tone. Remember how I told you, your family is broken and if there is anyone in this village that understands broken families it is me. Sarada slowly nodded. I don't like seeing you struggle with not knowing your father. There is nothing I can do about bringing him back to Konoha, but you can decide what you want right now. You can go talk to him. Sometimes a broken family doesn't have to stay broken, Yano. Naruto smiled at Sarada. His smile made Sarada's heart feel warm. Sarada seemed to have found herself intoxicated by Naruto's brilliant blue eyes. Go on. Naruto's smile became a fox-like smirk instantly. He is waiting for you. Sarada bit her lip at the change in Naruto's expression. She knew Naruto could not give away the feelings he had for her, as her dad was probably keeping an eye on them. That did not stop Sarada though. She had her back to her dad. As Naruto stood on his feet, he saw Sarada pull from her headband the orange flower. She tossed it to him and winked. Naruto turned his back with the flower between her fingers. He smiled down at the petals that seemed so resilient to what it had been through throughout the mission. Sarada went into the building and saw her dad sitting on a tabletop using a chair for his feet. He turned his head slightly at Sarada. Sarada walked towards him. Sasuke looked over her daughter, realizing just how much she did look like an Uchiha. What is the Hokage up to? Sasuke chose to get straight to the point. He cares about the village and the people in it. Sarada smiled. Not buying that. Sasuke looked down at his feet. He wiped the dirt off his shoes, and looked at Sarada. He said you already knew why he was here. Sarada resorted to just calling her dad out. She did not want to play any games right now. She had waited too long for this moment to be playing mind games. Sarada. Sasuke smiled cleverly at his daughter. So much like me, I have heard. Sarada let out a hey. I wouldn't know anything about that. Sarada walked closer to her dad. Naruto knows that I know about the Sharingan. Of course, he knows I do. Sasuke scooted off the chair and stood on his feet. He placed one foot in front of him and leaned in on his front foot. He held up his hand to make a spar gesture. I am not going to fight you. Sarada looked at her dad seriously. How did you wake it? Sasuke stayed in the same position. No. Hey Sarada, sorry I have not been in your life all these years. No, of course not. Sarada crossed her arms. Sasuke stood up and made a serious face at his daughter. He could see the side of Sakura showing in his daughter. He stepped closer to her. Why would I say sorry? He lifted 2 fingers to her forehead and pressed the points of his fingers to her forehead and grinned. Sarada's eyes followed her dad's fingers as he made that gesture. She made a confused face as her dad's fingers tapped her forehead. Huh. Sarada lifted her hand and pushed her dad's hand from her face. What do you mean? Sasuke laughed. You heard me, Sarada. Are you serious? Sarada had taken a step back from her dad and narrowed her eyes at him. I am not sorry at all that you have been raised in the Hidden Leaf village with all those people to raise you, train you, teach you. Sasuke could tell Sarada was not just like him, but also like Sakura. He could see the temper already building up in her. Sasuke even noticed that Sarada was already making fists with her hands, even with her arms crossed. Sarada took a deep breath and stood gripping her fists under her arms, as she felt the irritation turn to annoyance, and trigger the anger she so easy found herself going to these last weeks. She turned her head, closed her eyes. She dropped her fists to her side and turned to look her dad in his eyes. And what about missing out on my whole life? What about all the times you could have been teaching me about our clan? What about all those times that maybe I might have needed my dad around? Sarada's tone giving away the angst and anger she had built up all these years. She had felt abandoned by her dad. I have not missed out on your whole life, Sarada. Sasuke's tone rather calm and collected in comparison to his daughter. Just about, Sarada mumbled. I am here now. Ask me about our clan. Sasuke egged her on. Sasuke was a little surprised that he would hear his daughter was like him, and then find her so quick to anger. He of course found that to be a Sakura trait. He had already figured out she was trying to avoid mind games, and yet she easily fell into this so easily. He wanted her to get angry. There was only so many ways a Sharingan would be woken. After talking to her for this short time, he had already pieced together that it had to been an emotional release that caused her Sharingan to wake. Sarada didn't say anything as she stared her dad in his eyes. She gripped her fists tighter. Come on. Isn't this what the Hokage wanted, for us to have a talk? Sasuke's smugness echoed in Sarada's ears. Sarada felt a tear forming in the corner of her eye. She closed her eyes hoping to could fight it off. She felt all the negative thoughts she's had about him stack up in her stomach. She felt as if she swallowed a ton of bricks. While avoiding a mind game, here I am getting worked up and angry. I was so happy to see him, it seemed so perfect. What is he playing at talking to me like this? What is the point? You've gotten close to him, haven't you? Sasuke walked past her and looked outside to see Naruto scratching the hair on his head and staring up at the sky. Foolish ninja, he thought. Sarada's eyes opened at her father's words. She turned around to keep her eyes on her dad. She didn't say anything. She couldn't tell what her dad meant by gotten clothes. It seemed a little silly to assume he knew. Come on, I am trying to talk to you, Sarada. Get to know you. Sasuke's eyes still watching Naruto, who was now walking to a group of trees just a little way away. It was Mom's idea for me to talk to the Hokage. She is tired of me bothering her about you. She told the Hokage that he had answers she couldn't give me. She just doesn't want to face it. She doesn't know what to tell me anymore. Sarada tried to not think about the times she was alone with Naruto. Sakura, Sasuke's voice sounding amused. Turning to Naruto for help, his voice trailed off. Sarada thought about the first time she met with the Hokage again. She recalled the Hokage's words, "You know, I never had my parents growing up, and the hardest things in life I had to learn on my own without the guidance of a father." And, Sasuke turned to his child and smirked. Has he satisfied your curiosity? Sarada gulped down the noise that almost escaped her throat. She thought about her dad's words, satisfy my curiosity. She knew he meant the parental curiosity, and yet her mind thought even more about the times she was alone with the Hokage. She tried to think of what to say. Being silent seemed so easy right now. She had a fear that if she spoke up she might say something that would give both her and the Hokage away. What does it matter to you if it has? Sarada opted to turn the conversation around and avoid her personal and intimate feelings for the Hokage. It is not like you will change your ways and go home with us. Right. Sarada's fists tightening again, thinking about her mom sitting at home worried about what Sarada would choose to do. Go home with you. Who made you think of such things? Sasuke was caught off guard by his daughter's reaction. She says she misses you. Sarada lowered her head looking at the ground. She wanted me to tell you that she misses you. Sarada felt a twinge of pain in her heart thinking about her mom missing the man she loves and chose to have a family with. She felt another tear form in her eye, but this tear was not easily forced away. It rolled down her cheek. She felt sad and annoyed now listening to her dad speak so casually about her and her mom. Neither Sasuke or Sarada said a word. Sarada was fighting the tears that were now trying to follow the other one down her cheek. She closed her eyes and crouched down, rubbing the tears from her eyes. Sasuke watched his daughter and walked to her. He crouched in front of her, and smirked, waiting for her to look up. Sarada could feel him looking at her. She pushed her hands down from her eyes and looked up at her dad. He pushed his 2 fingers against her forehead again. Tell her I miss her too. He smiled and held his hand out to help her to her feet. He pulled her to her feet. Sarada smiled at her dad's words. She finally got the feeling that he cared about the family, even in the smallest way. No, it wasn't a small way. He misses mom, that is big. Sarada told her dad about the pictures that her mom had in the living room up on the wall. She told her dad about growing up without him. When she was a little girl, she hated hearing her mom crying herself to sleep. She hated the look of sadness that her mom would get in her eyes when she would draw her mom pictures of her and her dad. She grew up feeling numb to her mom's emotional feelings towards the absence of the man she loves. She told her dad how much she hated walking through the village, and everyone has pride in their clan, and yet here she was not knowing enough about her clan. The things she knew were textbook examples and definitions. She didn't feel connected to anything or anyone. Nothing felt right in the village. Most of the people in the village were an annoyance to her. She noticed her dad smirking at that last bit. She was running out of things to say. She did notice that her dad and her had the same conversational skills. He just sat and listened without contributing a large amount of dialogue to the conversation. Sarada started to feel like maybe that's how her friends feel when they talk to her and she just sits there listening, not really speaking. Of course, when Sarada ever did have anything to contribute to the conversation, as was usually rude, mean, sarcastic, or unnecessary. The conversation drifted into silence after Sarada mentioned that her friendship with Boruto was always one-sided. That Boruto was insistent on being at Sarada's side. He was an annoyance and a big mouth. He always knew more than he should, and that he was determined to always be better than his peers. Sarada was a little relieved to hear Boruto's excitable voice chiming outside. She walked outside to meet up with her team. Sasuke followed her and stood a couple steps behind his daughter. Mitsuki smiled at Sarada. Sarada turned her head slightly to her teammates and smiled. Nothing to report again. Boruto's voice filled with sarcasm. His eyes fell to his dad. The Hokage came up beside Mitsuki. And you, Sarada? Naruto turned his attention to Sarada. Sarada shrugged. She looked into the Hokage's eyes. The Hokage noticed the redness around her eyes. Ever since the night in the Hokage's office, he was more aware of when she had tears in her eyes. What is your next move? The Hokage asked Sasuke, wondering what the Shadow Hokage did or said to Sarada to make her cry. Sasuke looked at the team members until his eyes fell on his best friend. Are you going to leave me be this time? Sasuke raised an eyebrow. Naruto just grinned. There are 3 more buildings like this, Sasuke said confidently. I won't let them get away with what they are doing. We could help. Boruto spoke up enthusiastically. Sasuke laughed mockingly at Boruto's offer. It's quite alright, young Uzumaki. I do not need help. Sasuke chuckled at the thought. Sarada lowered her eyes to the ground. She would be the one laughing at Boruto like that if they were back in the village. She felt like cringing at the way she mocked Boruto all the time. Are you sure? The Hokage spoke seriously. No need, Hokage. You have kids to get home. He smirked at Naruto. Boruto made a pouty face and crossed his arms. No doubt Sakura is probably worried about Sarada. Wouldn't you say? Sasuke's voice almost sounding caring. Sarada felt Sasuke's hand rest on her shoulder. Naruto made a puzzled expression. He looked to Konohamaru. If he doesn't need us. Konohamaru said thoughtfully. And if he ever does. He knows where to find us. Konohamaru looked to Sasuke. Sasuke nodded. Naruto nodded in agreement with the other 2 adults. Boruto and Mitsuki exchanged looks. Konohamaru and Naruto turned to each other once again. Sasuke lowered his face to Sarada's ear. Sasuke's hushed voice whispered just behind Sarada's ear. Sarada's eyes were on the Hokage as Sasuke's words hit her ear. She froze still. Her heart seemed to pound in her ears. Sarada's eyes widened and she seemed to have forgotten how to breathe for a couple moments as her dad's words sank in. Sarada inhaled sharply as she realized she needed a breath. She turned to look at her dad. Well, then you make sure you continue sending intel. Naruto looked at Sasuke. Sasuke's gaze lingered on his daughter for a moment. He lifted his chin to look at the Hokage. What a drag, Boruto spoke, doing his best impression of Shikadai. At least no one was hurt. Mitsuki smiled, pleased with the fact that this mission actually turned out so much better than he first thought. Really, Mitsuki? That's what you have to say? Boruto whined. We can make it home by sunset if we leave now. Konohamaru, why don't you 3 head out? Naruto looked at Sarada for a moment and noticed she was still staring at her dad. He reached over and ruffled his son's hair. Stop. Boruto reached up and swatted at his dad's hand. Naruto laughed. Once again Konohamaru and the young boys turned their backs and headed off, leaving Sarada and Naruto to catch up with them. Naruto could hear Boruto complaining the whole time as they went their way. Naruto did have to admit to himself that if this was a mission he had as a kid or teen, he would have been complaining himself. Sasuke lifted his hand to Sarada's forehead and for the 3rd time in the morning. He pressed 2 fingers to her forehead. Sarada's eyes watched as his fingers made contact with her forehead. He dropped his hand and walked past his daughter. As he walked past Naruto, his eyes looked slantways at him. Naruto looked at Sasuke and saw the flash of red and purple in his eyes. Naruto halfway raised his fist to Sasuke. Sasuke walked past Naruto without acknowledging Naruto's hand gesture. Naruto turned his back to Sarada and watched as Sasuke walked away. Sarada took a couple steps till she was standing beside the Hokage. So, that's my dad. That is Sasuke Uchiha. Your dad? Naruto stared off as the last glimpse of Sasuke faded into the tree line. Naruto looked at Sarada and noticed Sarada had a look of deep thought on her face. He knelt down on his knee and looked up at Sarada. Sarada looked from the trees to the Hokage. What did he say to you, Sarada? Naruto's eyes just as inquisitive as the words he spoke. Sarada stared into Naruto's eyes. She seemed to be at a loss for words once again. She lowered her eyes down to Naruto's hands which were resting on his thighs. She found her eyes meeting his again. He doesn't talk to people much, does he? Sarada glanced toward the trees again. I guess not. Naruto felt lost. He tried to wake the Sharingan. Sarada recalled the things he said to her. And, Naruto looked concerned at the young Uchiha. Nothing. Sarada shrugged. It didn't happen. Naruto looked surprised. I guess, I didn't let it happen, I don't know. I didn't let him pry into my mind as much as he wanted to. Sarada looked back into the Hokage's beautifully vivid blue eyes. He told me to tell Mom, he misses her. Those words made both Naruto and Sarada smile. Naruto stood up and placed a hand on Sarada's bicep. He smirked. Sarada kept her smile. Well, let's get home so we can tell her. Naruto turned on his heel and started walking in the same direction the rest of the team had left in. Sarada and Naruto started on their way back to the hidden leaf. Sarada replayed the morning in her head. She couldn't shake the way her dad asked if the Hokage satisfied her curiosity. She thought if he knew about them that he would say something to Naruto. Sarada debated what to tell the Hokage, or if she even should say anything to him. It seemed somewhat silly to think that her dad would even know anything like that. He doesn't know anything about his daughter, how would he know this? Hokage. Sarada tried to keep her pace the same as Naruto's. She glanced at Naruto, but quickly looked ahead of herself to be sure not to trip over or run into anything. What is it? Naruto looked down at Sarada. Do you think he knows? Knows what? Naruto asked foolishly, and who? My dad, about, well, Sarada cleared her throat. Do you think he knows about us? How could he? Naruto gave this idea some thought. He couldn't recall doing or saying anything that would give anything away. Naruto was careful anyways because Boruto was on this mission with them. Naruto thought over his actions. Oh, Sarada continued on the pathway with Naruto. She sighed. Did he say anything? Naruto inquired. Well, he asked if I had gotten close to you. I told him that Mom had told you to talk to me. That she was tired of me bothering her for information, that you could probably help with all that. Sarada paused and her cheeks felt warm as she recalled feeling Naruto's heartbeat against her ear. And then he asked if you satisfy my curiosity. Sarada looked up at the Hokage. Naruto's pace slowed slightly, and he let out a Well, do I? Naruto smirked. Sarada blushed as their eyes met. Both of them slowed their quick pace to a walk. Sarada tried to think of how to respond, but she knew the blush on her cheeks was all he needed to see to know exactly what the answer was. Don't worry about him. Naruto smiled. He put a hand to her cheek. If he knew anything he would have said something back there. His thumb caressed her cheek for a moment. He lowered his hand and smirked again. Sarada's thoughts lingered on what her dad whispered in her ear. She felt a chill in her spine once more as his words came to life in her mind. You never did answer me, Sarada. Does the Hokage satisfy your curiosity? She couldn't tell what exactly her dad was playing at. She thought about his words over and over again. Calm down, Sarada. He couldn't know anything. He doesn't know a thing about you. He doesn't know what you and the Hokage talk about. He doesn't know what you and the Hokage do. Maybe he is feeling jealous that his best friend has taken an interest in caring for his child. Maybe dad is just trying to pry into your mind again. He only knows what you let him know. He couldn't possibly be able to tell from this morning about your secret meetings with the Hokage. Naruto is right. If Sasuke knew anything he would have said something to Naruto. Unless, he doesn't care. Sarada's thoughts raced through her mind as she tried to figure out what exactly her dad was up to. Sarada and the Hokage made it to the entrance of the hidden leaf just as the sun was touching the horizon. Sarada turned to the Hokage and smiled up at him. She loved the feeling of looking into his eyes and finding the rest of the world melting away. She let her negative emotions take away from so many moments that she could have been captivated and mesmerized by the Hokage's brilliant blue eyes. Sarada felt her cheeks get warm, and her heart start to make loud thumping sounds in her ears. I just wanted to tell you, Sarada spoke up. Thank you for this mission. The Hokage raised a hand behind his neck and scratched as he grinned at Sarada. Sarada continued. At one point in this mission I questioned you in my thoughts. I wasn't sure why exactly we even went on this mission if, clearly, my dad didn't need us at all. Sarada watched Naruto's expression change to surprised. Sakura and I had to make it seem convincing to Shikamaru, the Hokage admitted to Sarada. That's not easy, I am sure, Sarada smiled. Naruto's perfect blue eyes fixed on Sarada. Your Sharingan couldn't have come at a more perfect time, Yano. Naruto sounded nervous mentioning the night in the office. I guess I did a good job making you angry. Naruto's eyes left Sarada's eyes. He looked down at the ground. Sarada wanted to reach out to him, but she remembered she was back in the Leaf Village. Hokage. Sarada glanced around her. She knew Boruto had to be somewhere around the village, more than likely waiting to get alone with Sarada to question her about her dad. Sarada got an annoying feeling that Chocho would probably be somewhere around here too. Sarada didn't want to be around anyone, but the Hokage right now. She bit her lip thinking about the idea of being alone with Naruto. She could feel her heart pounding again. Can you be there when I talk to my mom? Sarada asked in a cheerful sort of way. For Sarada it was as cheerful as had ever heard herself talk. Naruto looked up at Sarada and smiled. Okay. Naruto felt a smirk escape him as he turned to start walking. Sarada walked alongside him. Kakashi-sensei and the rest of the team are probably waiting on us. Naruto spoke up as they walked up the road. Let's report first. Sarada nodded at the Hokage's suggestion. She and the Hokage made it to the building with little to no stops. There was a couple eager to see the return of the Hokage. A girl and boy were playing on the street, and both bumped into Sarada as they chased each other across the road. When the kids realized Sarada was standing with the Hokage, they both spoke excitedly to him, and the Hokage crouched down to their level and spoke to them for several minutes. Once they got into the Hokage's office, Boruto, Mitsuki, and Konohamaru turned their attention to them. Kakashi peered over from the other side of the desk at the two. Shikamaru was leaning against the side of the desk with his back to Kakashi. Sarada noted the lighter in Shikamaru's hand that he kept flicking open and shut. Made it back. Sorry about the wait. Naruto looked at Kakashi with a confident smile. Konohamaru filled us in on everything. If there is nothing left to report, Kakashi looked to Shikamaru, then you all may go. Nothing else to report. Naruto spoke calmly. He nodded at Konohamaru. Konohamaru nodded too. Shikamaru turned around and shoved his lighter away in his pocket. How is Sasuke? Shikamaru looked over at Naruto. Naruto chuckled. Sarada heard her dad's last words to her echo in her ears. He is Sasuke. Naruto waved a hand to Shikamaru. Dismissed. Then, Kakashi raised an eyebrow to Shikamaru. Tiresome, and troublesome. It's too much of a drag to try and figure out what you guys are hiding from me. Shikamaru looked from Sarada to Konohamaru. His eyes then shifted from Naruto to the Kakashi. Thinking too hard, Kakashi suggested. Go get rest. Shikamaru looked over Kakashi's face. Sarada watched as Shikamaru turned to the Hokage and walked past him. Naruto smiled at Shikamaru. Shikamaru narrowed his eyes at the Hokage and let out a and walked out of the office. Boruto looked over at his dad, and then to Kakashi-sensei. What is with him? Boruto jerked his head to the door. Both Naruto and Kakashi let out a and waved a hand to Boruto telling him to not worry about. Let's not worry ourselves with Shikamaru. He probably has been working too hard these last few days. Kakashi stood up. Well then, Konohamaru see to Boruto and Mitsuki. I need a word with the Hokage and Sarada. See you tomorrow, Sarada. You will have to tell me everything. Boruto's eyes lit up as she walked past her. Naruto grinned at Boruto. As the door to the office closed, Kakashi's eyes met Naruto's. How was he? Well, Naruto shrugged. He was himself. Kakashi-sensei. Sarada spoke up. Did you know? Of course. Kakashi grinned under the material covering his face. Someone had to be on the inside. Sarada looked up at the Hokage, and then back at Kakashi. So, you figured it out. Kakashi nodded at Sarada. Sarada smiled and nodded. Couldn't let Team 7 down. Kakashi brushed the back of his hand against his forehead. Yeah, Team 7. Naruto spoke with sentiment toward his old team. You better get home. I am sure Sakura is waiting for you. Kakashi looked to Sarada. Kakashi looked up at Naruto. And don't worry about anything. I will give you back the office tomorrow morning. Kakashi took from the desk drawer a brightly colored book. Naruto recognized the book right away. Reading those again. Kakashi grinned and closed his eyes cheerfully. Naruto's heart felt a tug reminding himself who wrote those books that Kakashi loves so very much. Naruto and Sarada left the Hokage's office. Naruto went with Sarada to her home and stayed with her as she told her mom about her dad. Sakura got tears in her eyes hearing that he misses her too. She thanked Naruto for making sure that Sarada was able to meet her dad. The three of them talked for a little while. Sakura finally admitted to the Hokage and her daughter that she was getting tired, and she was surprised that the two of them were not tired themselves. Naruto stood up and told Sakura that he would leave then so that they could get some rest. Sakura smiled kindly at Naruto. Before you go, Sarada spoke up. She got to her feet. Sarada looked at her mom, and then at Naruto. What is it, Sarada? Sakura looked to her daughter concerned. Aren't you hungry, Hokage? Sarada thought quickly of something to say. She didn't want him to go yet. At hearing the word hungry, both Sarada and Naruto's stomachs growled. Oh my god, where are my manners? Sakura brought her hand to the side of her face and shook her head in her hand. I am now. Naruto put a hand on his stomach, feeling the rumbling in his tummy. He looked down at his growling stomach and realized he had not eaten all day. Let me see what I can get you to. Sakura disappeared to the kitchen. Sarada looked up at the Hokage and stepped back away from the walkway of the kitchen. She sat down on the end of the couch that was out of eyesight of the kitchen. She smirked at the Hokage and looked down at the couch and then up at him, inviting him to come sit beside her. Oh, Sakura shuffled through cabinets in the kitchen. She took out 2 cups of instant ramens. She poked her head to look at the Hokage. She held up the cups. Naruto looked over at Sakura trying to shake the playful look he just got from Sarada. He blinked the sight out of his eyes trying to straighten his thoughts out. Shrimp noodles. Sakura shrugged. Sure. Sarada chimed in hoping her mom would disappear into the kitchen again. Yeah, you know me, Sakura, I don't mind. Naruto smiled at Sakura. Sakura nodded. She returned to the kitchen. Naruto turned his eyes to Sarada. Sarada smiled brightly at the Hokage. Naruto walked to the couch and sat down. He looked over Sarada's face. The look in her eyes told him everything. He felt his own heart skip a beat thinking that Sakura was in the room right next door, and yet Sarada sat right beside him giving him that look. That look that made him want to lean over and kiss her. That look that tempted him to just scoop her up and carry her up her to bedroom like he had the day before. Sarada, Naruto spoke in a hushed tone. You're looking at me like. He licked his bottom lip and brushed his top teeth over his bottom lip. Like what, Hokage? She spoke quietly. Her hands reached over to his hand, and she grabbed his ring finger and pinky, and lightly held them. Sarada, he breathed lustfully. His voice as quiet as he could. Naruto, Sarada dared to not only call the Hokage by his name, but to speak his name in an enticing way. Naruto's lips parted as he heard his name come from her lips. Hearing her say his name like that made his ears and cheeks get warm. Sarada smirked at him, and Naruto could tell from her reaction that now he was blushing. Naruto took a deep breath. Sarada's fingers began caressing the length of his ring finger. Naruto closed his eyes for a moment, getting lost in the sensation of her touch. Naruto fought back the groan of pleasure that was trying to escape his lips. Sarada moved her hand from his as she heard her mom's feet shuffling. Naruto opened his eyes at the absence of Sarada's touch. He looked into Sarada's eyes. He wanted her to see in his eyes what she had worked up within him. Their eyes met, and both of them bit their lips, feeling that they both wanted each other. Okay, it is almost ready. Sakura called from the kitchen. Sarada called out with a very distracted, distant, okay. Both Sarada and Naruto forced themselves to take their eyes off each other. Sarada looked away at the pictures on the wall of her family. Naruto turned to Sakura. Sakura watched the two of them for a moment. She sat down in the smaller chair adjacent to the couch. Both Naruto and Sarada quickly ate their ramen noodles. Neither of them wanted to sit around with Sakura with the feelings they were feeling. Sakura talked about the things going on in the village in an attempt to keep them all updated on the goings-on of the village while the two were gone. Sarada glanced at Naruto to catch his eye whenever she knew her mom was not looking. After they ate, Sakura told Naruto good night. Naruto told both of them good night. He hugged Sakura. Sakura walked the empty cups to the kitchen and cleaned the utensils. In the absence of Sakura in the living room, Naruto leaned over to Sarada's ear. Be free tomorrow afternoon, at the place I showed you, and I will tell, like what? Naruto made sure his lips brushed her earlobe, and he let out a sensual quiet growl in her ear. He stood up and smirked down at Sarada. He walked to the door and let himself out. Sakura waved from the kitchen walkway. Sarada gulped, getting to her feet. She bit the inside of her lip, thinking about being alone with the Hokage, yet again. She took a couple deep breaths to get her mind cleared. Sarada walked to the kitchen just as her mom was finishing up. I am pretty tired. Sarada forced herself to make a dramatic yawn. As am I. Sakura agreed. Sarada turned to leave the kitchen but turned back to her mom. She smiled at her mom. What is it? Sakura looked at her daughter. Thank you. Sarada leaned on the wall at her side. You and the Hokage, and Kakashi-sensei. Naruto told you. Sakura looked somewhat surprised that Sarada knew the mission was in fact just a flop. No, I figured it out, mostly. Sarada said confidentially. Mom, Sarada stood up straight. He really does miss you. I could tell. Sakura took a deep breath to collect her thoughts and fight back any surprise tears that might try to make an appearance. Sakura nodded. Both of them said good night. Sarada went to her room. She found her room still untouched. She crawled into her bed and pulled her pillow tightly to her chest. She hugged it and inhaled deeply, hoping for just a small scent of the Hokage still in her bed. She fell asleep with a smile tucked against the pillow she was holding close to her body. Waking up the next day, Sarada found herself to be in an oddly cheerful mood. She got out of bed, and realized she was still wearing her clothes from the day before. She showered and went downstairs to find her mom was already awake. Sarada went to the kitchen and smiled beside her mom. She helped her mom make breakfast. Sakura and she talked about the plans for the day. Sakura explained that she was once again going to be working long hours the next 2 days, but that she would prep meals for her. Sarada waved a hand to her. Not to worry, she told her mom. She reminded her mom that she had been saving up her mission money as a savings, but she would use some of it for the next couple days so her mom need not worry about doing the extra work. Sarada hugged her mom and kissed her on the cheek. The day went about its usual way. She met up with Chocho, and rather than be irritated by all the prying into everyone's lives, Sarada happily told her best friend how her dad was exactly as people described him. Boruto eventually met up with Sarada, and he too pried about Sasuke. Sarada smirked at Boruto and assured him that his dad was right about her dad. Boruto took offense in hearing that his dad's opinion of Sasuke was accurate. He is so cool, Boruto smiled widely, talking about Sasuke. Not as cool as your dad, he is the Hokage, and everyone says he is the legend of the leaf. Sarada looked up at the sky, remembering that it was Boruto's dad that made it possible for her to even meet her dad. If things were different, she might not have ever met him. True. The Hokage is pretty damn cool. Chocho squealed. But your dad sounds too mysterious, and Chocho's eyes lit up. My dad is so lame. Boruto looked at Chocho with boring expression on his face. The day continued and there was nothing unusual or new, or anything, except Sarada felt a strange relief of irritability and annoyance at the normal everyday things and people that would make her scowl and insert her usual sarcasm. Sarada took Chocho to lunch and offered to pay, and of course Chocho did not say no to the offer. She listened to Chocho talk about how her dad needs to be cooler. Sarada mused, imagining Choji with chakra cloak like the Hokages, or even a visual prowess like the Uchihas or Hyugas. Sarada just smiled at Chocho's complaining. Your dad fought in the war. That is cool. Sarada chimed in as soon as Chocho took a break to start eating. So, Chocho looked at her friend with a what's the big deal sort of expression. I am just saying that the people that stood up and defended this village during the ninja war had to have some strength and some really powerful techniques. Sarada looked down at her food. After the two of them had eaten, Sarada reassured Chocho that her dad was really cool. Sarada waved to Chocho and turned to the opposite direction of where Chocho was headed. Sarada smiled widely to herself as she looked up at the walkway in front of her. She thought about what she had told Boruto about his dad being cool. She bit the inside of her lip. The Hokage is so amazing, clever, funny, and handsome. Yeah, he is so, the way he smirks, his toned body, his hands touching my body, the way he says my name, the way I can't help but say his name. Sarada's thoughts grew more and more sensuous as she walked up the narrow steps. She slipped into his small walkway leading to the door she found herself staring at the other day. She looked both ways to be sure that there was no one watching or passing by. So you couldn't even give me a chance to get here first? Naruto said in a walking alongside Sarada. Sarada looked up at the Hokage. She was surprised to see him dressed in such a casual way. Black pants, and a black t-shirt. Sarada could tell that the black shirt had to be an undershirt because how tight it fitted him. Sarada's eyes looked up to his eyes. Naruto's fox-like smirk exciting Sarada. I guess not. Sarada bit her lip. Naruto reached over and opened the door. He pushed the door open, allowing Sarada to get in first. Sarada stepped in and looked around inside to remind herself of how the place looked. It still looked the same. At the sound of the door closing, Sarada turned to the Hokage, who had his back against the back of the door, and his fingers locking the door. He was sure to lock both locks, so no one could get in even if they had the key. Sarada looked over the Hokage's body, and she blushed at the lewd things that came to mind. She wanted to hear him say her name the same way he did the morning he was in her room. She wanted to feel his toned torso beneath her fingers. So, should we leave off where we were last night? Naruto raised a finger to Sarada and gestured for her to come hither. Sarada lifted her hands to her headband as she stepped to the Hokage. She pulled her headband from her hair and tucked it away into her back pocket. She reached her hands out to his and smiled up at Naruto. Weren't we sitting down? She reminded him, and pulled his hands to her body and took a step back, trying to hint for them to move to the couch. Naruto smiled, pleased to see Sarada was less reserved than she normally would be. He took a step forward for every step that Sarada took backwards. Weren't we? Naruto spoke playfully. And if I am not mistaken, you were about to tell me something about the look I was giving you. Sarada stood by the couch. Naruto sat down and shot a lustful smirk up at Sarada. Remind me again of that look. Sarada bit her lip and moved her body to stand in front of the Hokage. She took her glasses from her face and looked into the Hokage's eyes. Her body wanted to be closer to him, and her hands wanted to touch him. She looked over his body, remembering the last time they were alone in this room. She looked into Hokage's eyes, letting the thoughts of her touching his body tempt herself. She leaned forward, placing her hands on his legs. Her eyes still looking into his. Naruto placed his hands over hers and pulled them slowly up his own legs. He leaned back on the couch as he pulled her hands to his torso. Sarada's lips parted as she felt Naruto's torso beneath her fingers. Yes, that's the look, Naruto's fox-like smirk making an appearance. He continued pulling Sarada's hands up his body until her hands were on his chest, and Sarada had no choice but to take a couple steps until she was standing in between Naruto's legs. That look, I just want to. Naruto's hands reached out for Sarada's hips and somewhat forcefully pulled Sarada into his lap. This forced Sarada to straddle his waist. Sarada blushed at the feeling of her hips pressed against the Hokage's. She looked down at the position both of them had gotten into. She gasped at the realization that Naruto was already perked up. Sarada was sure that she must have given away this realization on her face, because as soon as her eyes met the Hokage's again, Naruto pushed his hips up against hers. What? She whispered, trying to keep her cool. Her hands now moving up to his shoulders, and she leaned forward to bring her forehead close to the Hokage's. She lightly pressed her forehead to his, and smirked. Sarada, Naruto breathed lustfully. Tell me, Hokage. Sarada's hand found the back of his neck and she lightly caressed the hair on Naruto's neckline. And then you call me, Hokage. Naruto groaned. His hands found the small of her back and pushed her hips down against his. Sarada kissed Naruto on the lips as her body was forced against his. She parted her lips against his, already ready to deepen their kiss. Before they had time to realize what was going on, they both were thrusting against each other's body, their breath heavy in between kisses, and their hands exploring each other's bodies. Naruto groaned against Sarada's lips, and lightly bit on her lip. Sarada pulled out of the kiss and sat up on the Hokage's lap, looking down at him with lust-filled eyes locked on the Hokage's eyes. Both their hearts racing, both their lungs catching up on the breaths they deprived themselves of while kissing. Both their bodies begging for more. Without any warning, the Hokage's arms wrapped around Sarada's lower body. He pushed his body up off the couch, and as he stood on his feet, he leaned in and kissed Sarada's collarbone. The warmth of his breath bathing her skin and giving her goosebumps. Sarada's wrapped her arms around his shoulders. Naruto did not waste any time walking to the bedroom down the hall. He laid her down on the bed and crawled up her body. His hands pushed her shirt up off her torso. He kissed the sensitive skin on her stomach, and up her ribcage. As his hands worked on removing her top, his tongue freely lightly licked her soft skin and kissed along her ribcage. Sarada helped Naruto free herself of the top. His fingers moved down to her shoulders where he tugged the bra strap, implying to her to remove it as well. As Sarada arched her back, both of them worked together to free her body of just another layer of clothing that was in the way. Naruto's lips found her nipple and without hesitation he continued to use his tongue to please her body. He was sure to give the same attention to her other. Naruto, please. Sarada squirmed in pleasure at the pleasure her body was experiencing. Her hands grabbed at whatever part of his body she could reach. Naruto lifted his head and looked down at her. Naruto lifted his hands to his shirt and removed it. He started to undo his belt and his pants. Sarada glanced down at Naruto's hands working quickly to free his arousal. Sarada looked up into the Hokage's eyes. Naruto freed his body from his clothing. He smirked down at Sarada. His hands grazed up her legs until he was tugging at her shorts, insisting that they come off. Sarada did not take her eyes off of Naruto's face as he removed her bottoms. She felt if she looked down at her bodies she might ruin the moment with her embarrassment of her own body, and how much everything makes her blush. Naruto leaned over her body. His body lining up perfectly against hers. He placed on hand on her hip. Sarada winced at the feeling of Naruto slowly forcing himself inside her. Naruto lowered his head to her shoulder and groaned in pleasure. He kissed the skin against his lips, and bit lightly at her shoulder as their bodies got used to the change. Sarada slowly pushed her hips against him. Naruto thrusted his hips slowly. He groaned pleasurably into her neck as Sarada matched his thrusts with her own. Naruto's hands giving her body attention, caressing, and stroking the soft sensitive skin wherever he could. Sarada's hands clung to Naruto's lowered back, keeping their bodies in the same pace. Feels so good, Naruto, Sarada moaned against the side of Naruto's head. Naruto moaned in agreement with Sarada. "Essa good," Naruto managed to mumble against Sarada's lips before kissing her forcefully. Sarada returned the kiss in the same forceful way as the Hokage. That dizzying feeling of euphoria returning to Sarada. She recalled the same feeling she had in her room just the other day. She pushed her hips to match Naruto's thrusting. Sarada again found herself in shock and amazement that this was happening. Sarada, Naruto moaned deeply and against her lips. Sarada looked into his eyes. Looking into each other's eyes sent both of them over the edge. Sarada couldn't control it, help it, or even realize she was that close to climax. She arched her back and lifted her chin to the ceiling, letting out a moan that included the words, "And Hokage." Naruto looked up at Sarada hearing her say that. He added his own, and he shivered in pleasure.